Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Michael? It's good to be with you.
Good to have you here. I'm wondering that the numbers that we see coming out, 68 for three, 70 for three, is that really where the Mets are with Alonso?
Yeah, I can't confirm the numbers. Joel Sherman obviously had that number in the Post. I don't know where he got it. I will say this. It does feel like the Mets won this negotiation, whether it's 70, 80, whatever it was. They got him to agree to a 3-year deal. A guy who's hit the most home runs in the National League since he come in 6 years ago. And to me, it's a waste. If you win the negotiation, then you should sign the player, right? I mean, it looks like even if those numbers aren't exactly right, Joel's obviously an excellent reporter, but even if they're not exactly right, we know it's not a huge deal for Alonso, right? It's like that those numbers are less than 10% of what Soto got. And I get he's not Soto. I get that, but they won the negotiation, but that becomes pointless if you don't actually sign the player.
But do you think they won the negotiation, or does Alonso's side want like over $30 million a year for 3 years?
I mean, my guess would be that the 30 a year would get it done. I don't know that as a fact. If you have opt-outs, they certainly have been amenable to a 3-year deal. I mean, I don't think they would be crazy and think that he's a $40 million player at this point. But, I mean, certainly the first year salary is a big deal when you have an opt-out after that first year. So, maybe they want it a little bit front-loaded, but I would think at 30 a year, and again, I don't know what his conversations are like with Toronto and the Angels and San Francisco, anyone else he may be talking to. I would think that gets it done with the Mets. He certainly seems like he would like to return if he could, but at this point, I mean, it doesn't appear that he'll be able to return with his head held high, right? I mean, you got to save face to some degree. I mean, to get him to return, you'd have to make it look a little bit better for him at this point, even if those numbers aren't exactly right. Again, I don't know the exact numbers. It's not going to be anything close to what he was looking for or what he was offered in the summer of 2022.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think he regrets turning down the 158? Because no matter where he goes, I don't think it's going to come close to that in the total number.
Well, we'll see what the final total is. Your idea of 3 for 90 with opt-outs, there is something to recommend that if you really want to bet on yourself. I mean, obviously we know Snell did that, and then the next year signed for $182 million. Chapman did that, then the next year signed for $151 million. So if he does get 3 for 90 with opt-outs, that may turn out better. But, I mean, most players would prefer that the longer deal be set where you are and know exactly what you're going to be getting. And does he regret it? I don't know. We'd have to ask him. But, I'm sure that thought has creeped into his mind, I'm sure.
The only way I think he gets done, and this is just from the outside view at 30,000 feet, is if Cohen steps in. If somehow, they pull at the heartstrings that this is a homegrown Met, the Met fans love him. And it seems as if Cohen is letting David Stearns do the ultimate negotiating here, and Stearns doesn't want to give that much money to a 30-year-old corner infielder. Am I reading it right?
No, I think you're reading it exactly right. Obviously Cohen was very involved in the Soto negotiations, hosted him at his home in Beverly Hills, hosted him again at his home in Boca Raton. He made that his thing to get Soto done, and certainly Stearns was involved, but that was clearly a Steve Cohen deal. After that, and look, I mean, David Stearns did a fantastic job his first year. Nobody thought they were a playoff team. He thought they were a playoff team. He said that out loud in spring training, and they were not just a playoff team. They were a team that got to the LCS. All of his bigger moves, and he didn't have any really huge moves. Cohen had invested $1 billion in players previous to Stearns coming in. Stearns spent less than $100 million and turned them into a very viable contender in 1 year. So I get it. You want to give him leeway, but I do think, obviously, Steve Cohen is an involved owner generally, and, that is the one thing that probably could save this. Stearns is an analytics guy, went to Harvard, and he's got his calculations, and he takes a very cool, calculated approach to the negotiation. But Steve Cohen may be listening to the fans, seeing some of the criticism, and maybe he will jump in. That's why we're not going to write this off completely. It certainly looks unlikely at this moment, but I wouldn't write it off 100% because we know that last year Steve Cohen stepped out and decided, you know what, we could use J.D. Martinez, and he did that deal, and that's happened on a few occasions at this point.
Did you know, John, I mean, we've known each other a long time. Did you know that I went to Harvard?
You could have gone to Harvard.
No. I walked around it. I walked around it. I didn't go actually to classes, but I did go to see it.
Is this like when you told me there was a statue of you at Fordham, and I was walking around the campus looking for it for about an hour, and I never found it?
You and O'Neill did the same thing.
That's kind of a story. But I believe you could have gone to Harvard.
I don't think so. I made the right move.
You just didn't want to leave the Bronx. Everything you do is in the Bronx, so you just didn't want to go.
You're absolutely right. Do you think there's a problem right now with free agency? It looks like in baseball, the best guys are going to get paid. That's just the truth. And the guys that are just under the best guys are going to have to sweat a little bit. It happened last year, and I think it's happening again this year.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the case. I wrote about this today in the Post. There are 156 players who played major league games last year who were still waiting for a job. Now, a lot of them didn't play a full season and probably will not get a job at the major league level, but 60 or 70 of them are still waiting, and we have basically a little over 3 weeks to go before pitchers and catchers report. One agent complained to me that only the top 5 guys are going to get huge contracts now, and of course that's a bit of hyperbole, and he said top 5. He didn't mean 5%. He meant like Soto, Ohtani, Judge, those guys.
Right.
I don't think it's that bad. Certainly, and I think there's a little bit of groupthink going on. I think somebody who goes the other way and tries to get the best relievers and figure out something different might actually do better. Just like I think if you get Alonso on a good deal, go ahead and sign him. But it does seem like almost all the GMs are of the same mind that the starting pitchers are all very valuable, even though they no longer throw 9 innings, certainly, or most of them, other than Logan Webb and Zach Wheeler, they don't throw 8 innings, and other than Cole and a few others, they don't even throw 7 innings, yet their prices are all way up, and it feels like a lot of other players' prices are way down. And, I know there are a lot of anxious players out there and trying to figure it out, but it does feel like the money has moved to the top and to the rotation, and everybody else is struggling.
One of the guys that has to feel a little bit nervous right now is Santander. He hit 44 home runs last year for the Orioles, and I'm not quite sure that I could see the landing spot for him where he's going to make huge money on a long-term deal.
Well, I mean, Toronto's got to sign somebody at some point, and they do appear to be one of the final 3 teams or maybe even 2 teams for Sasaki. Just reading tea leaves at this moment, with them getting international bonus money to spend, they obviously feel they have a chance as this is coming down to the wire, maybe decided very, very soon. So they've got that going for them, but, I mean, they need to do a lot. They finished 14 games under last year. That's pretty bad. They have not won a playoff series of this regime in 9 years. They should be better than this. They should do better than this. They should be able to get somebody to come. I mean, obviously, they tried for Ohtani. They tried for Soto. They tried for Burns. But, I mean, you don't have to, only get the grade A-plus player. There's plenty of A players out there still, and that includes Bregman, Alonso, and Santander. And it seems like they've dabbled with all 3. All of them could fit. I mean, I don't think you signed Bregman and Alonso, but one or the other, and certainly Santander. They need offense. They've lost Semien. They lost Lourdes Gurriel. They've lost Teoscar. They went for defense, and that was not the right move, as it turned out. Kevin Kiermaier's a fine player, but you need to score some runs, and they need to do something about that, and certainly should sign one of these players, at least between Bregman, Alonso, and Santander. And those 3 stars that are still left. And I think ultimately Bregman will get a nice long deal, but I'm not sure, that the slugger is not beloved like they used to be. So Santander and Alonso are going to ultimately, it looks like, be disappointed with what they get. But to me, you can get a star player like that on a reasonable deal. Go ahead and do it. Somebody should.
We're talking with John Heyman of the New York Post here on the Michael K. Show. Let's double back to the Mets for a moment. If Alonso leaves, right, like that's the tea leaves say that it will happen, and the Mets don't get another big name guy, and they improve the bullpen, and they go with Vientos at first, and then any combination of three kids at third, you do have to wonder, even though they got Soto, the big prize, are they A, better than last year? I would say they probably are, but B, are they on the outside looking in the playoff picture with the great teams in the West, and you've got the Phillies still, and I don't think the Braves are done at this point. Don't the Mets have to do more if they let Alonso go?
I would certainly think so, and they certainly seem to be concentrating on the pen. There's so many good relievers left. I think basically 85% of the top relievers are still on the board, including Tanner Scott, who's a lefty, would be a great pairing with Diaz at the back end there. That would be huge for them. I'm kind of with you. I think they're maybe slightly better. I think they overachieved to some degree last year. Their payroll is now down $70 million from where it was last year. They're basically tied with the Braves for the payroll that's dipped the most. And I get, obviously, Scherzer and Verlander, McCann came off the books, and at least to this point, Alonso obviously off the books. So there should be money to spend, and I'm just not sure. I mean, to me, Santander is a better fit for Atlanta than he is for the Mets.
Right.
He's an outfielder, not a first baseman, and I think the Mets are pretty well stocked in the outfield at this point. So I'm not – if they don't turn around and repivot and go for Alonso, I'm not sure what they do offensively. And they're going to be a little better, certainly with Soto, but I always believe that it's good to have somebody behind Soto who's an established slugger. Obviously, you're not going to get an Aaron Judge. And I mentioned this to a Met person at one point, and he said basically the only way Soto can really be protected in the lineup is if you have Judge or Ohtani. Otherwise, or maybe Freeman, they're all going to pitch around him anyway. Alonso isn't, Alonso's great, but he's not Soto, and you're going to be pitching around Soto no matter who's behind him other than Judge or Ohtani. So that's the way they felt about it. That's the way they feel about it. I don't know. To me, they had an opportunity here, maybe still do, a little bit of an opening, I don't know, to really put a dynamic offense together at a very reasonable rate. I mean, we don't know that those numbers are exactly right. They may be, but it's not going to be crazy money, that's for sure. So, it's easy for me to – it's my job to spend billionaires' money, but, they're down $70 million. If you give Alonso, let's just say 30 round number, and you give Scott 15, you still lop off the payroll, and you have a much better offense, a much better bullpen, and you're a better team. I'm still concerned about the rotation, but look, I mean, Stearns did such a great job last year between Severino and Minaya that, I'm going to have to give him a little leeway on that. I just wonder if Montas is right for New York, if Holmes can convert to a starter. I think there are a lot of questions in that rotation.
Absolutely. Great stuff, John. Have a great weekend. We thank you for joining us, as always.
You too, Michael. Anytime.
All right. That's John Heyman of the New York Post.